In the beginning, there was darkness. But then, with a divine utterance, light shattered the void, and the universe was born. Have you ever wondered why we exist? How the earth came to be? How everything we see around us, from the vast oceans to the tiniest creatures, was created? And what role do we, as human beings, play in this grand cosmic plan? But here's something even more shocking. What if everything we've been taught about the beginning of the world, the creation of humanity, and the Great Flood holds deeper truths that have been hidden for centuries? Could there be secrets buried within the pages of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, that could change how we view life, faith, and purpose? In this video, we will uncover those very truths. We'll explore the stories of Adam and Eve, the fall of man, Cain's deadly jealousy, and Noah's journey through a world that had turned corrupt. We will dive deep into God's promises, His covenant with Abraham, and His grand design for humanity. But the most important question still remains: why did it all happen? What can we learn from these ancient stories that not only shape our past, but also guide our future? So stay with me as we embark on this journey through Genesis, where each lesson holds the power to heal, inspire, and transform our understanding of who we are and why we're here. Now, before we dive deeper, let me ask you, have you ever wondered why the flood came? Why did God choose Noah, and why was humanity given a second chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts on these questions in the comments below, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the incredible truths we're about to reveal. Join me, and let's discover how these ancient events still speak to us today, providing us with guidance, wisdom, and a clearer path forward. The first day, the creation and the meaning behind every moment. In the beginning, God spoke, and the universe responded with light. Have you ever thought about the profound power behind those words? Let there be light. In just a single phrase, the Creator made the first clear distinction: light from darkness. That simple act wasn't just about illumination. It was the beginning of order, of the separation of chaos into something beautiful and purposeful. This wasn't just the creation of the world. This was the creation of meaning, the foundation of all that we know. The first day of creation sets the tone for everything that followed. Light is often seen as a symbol of knowledge, of enlightenment, of God's presence among His people. In every instance of light mentioned in the Bible, there is the underlying message of God guiding us out of darkness, of showing us the path forward. And yet the question arises: why was this necessary? Why the separation of light from darkness? It is as if God was saying to humanity, you will face both light and darkness in your journey, but you are made to choose the light, to walk toward it, to let it guide you. In the same way, our lives are full of moments of chaos, of darkness, whether it's personal struggles, doubts, or the weight of the world pressing down on us. But within those moments, there is always the light of hope, the potential for growth, the invitation to find clarity in the chaos. God didn't just create the light on that first day. He gave us a constant reminder that in every trial, there is the potential for renewal, for revelation. For example, think about a time in your life when you faced a period of uncertainty, a time when the path seemed unclear. Perhaps it was during a difficult job search or a time of personal loss. But what happened next? Somehow, in that darkness, you found the strength to move forward, to keep going. That strength wasn't from within you. It was the light that God placed in your heart, the light He set in motion from the very beginning of time. He was reminding you, just as He did on that first day, that no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always a way through the darkness, always a chance for something beautiful to emerge. And when we begin to recognize this, when we stop fearing the darkness and embrace the light, we realize that we are walking in the same footsteps as the first creatures God called into being. We too are created to emerge from chaos, to find our way in the light. So as we continue to explore the creation of the world, let us remember that each day of creation is not just a description of the world's formation, but a message for us, a message of growth, of overcoming, of transformation. We are part of that grand design, and we are meant to reflect that same order, that same light in the world around us. In the next chapter of Genesis, we see God create the sky and the seas, the land and the plants. He's not just creating a physical world, but a world that is abundant with possibilities. We too are called to create abundance in our lives, to see the world not just as a place of survival, but as a place of opportunity, of growth, of flourishing. Adam and Eve, the journey from Eden to original sin. On the sixth day, God created humanity in his image, and with that creation, he made something deeply sacred. Adam and Eve were not just the first humans, they were the first to hold the potential for relationship with God, for choice, for love. In their creation, God breathed life into them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth." They were given dominion over the animals, the birds, and the fish. It was a life of unimaginable beauty and harmony, a life where everything had its place. But then the serpent entered the scene. He whispered a lie to Eve, one that questioned God's goodness, his intentions for them. "Did God really say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?" he asked. It was a simple question, but it planted the seed of doubt. Eve, in her curiosity, looked at the fruit, and it seemed good to eat. It promised wisdom, something more, something beyond the perfection of the garden. She ate, and so did Adam. In that one moment, the course of human history was forever altered. The fall of man is often seen as a failure, as a tragedy. But if we look deeper, we can see something else. Adam and Eve were given the gift of free will. They were created in God's image, and with that image came the ability to choose. This is something we often overlook when we think about the fall. God did not create robots to follow him mindlessly. He created beings capable of love, capable of choice, capable of relationship. And with that came the possibility of rejection, the possibility of sin. The real tragedy wasn't just that they ate the fruit. It was that they chose to listen to a voice that contradicted God's truth. They chose to believe the lie that they could be like God, that they could have control, that they could be independent of his guidance. In doing so, they severed the very relationship that was meant to sustain them. But here's where the story takes a turn. In that very moment of disobedience, God could have abandoned them. He could have wiped them off the earth and started over. But instead, he did something remarkable. He called out to Adam, "Where are you?" These were not just words of rebuke. They were words of searching. God was reaching out, still hoping for reconciliation, still hoping to restore what had been broken. This is where we learn one of the most profound lessons of Genesis. God never gives up on us, even when we make choices that lead us into darkness. Even in the face of our sin, God calls us back. He doesn't abandon us. He doesn't turn his back. He continues to seek us out, to offer forgiveness, and to restore what has been lost. Think about your own life. Have you ever made a mistake, a choice you regretted, something that seemed to push you further from God? In those moments, it's easy to believe that God is angry, that he's turned away. But the truth is, just as he searched for Adam in the garden, he is searching for you. He's calling your name, waiting for you to turn back to him. No matter how far you've gone, no matter how dark the path may seem, he is always waiting with open arms. This is the hope that Genesis gives us. It's not just a story about the fall of man, it's a story about the grace of God, who continues to pursue us, continues to love us, and continues to offer us the chance to return to the light. And when we embrace that grace, when we come back to him, we begin to see the world anew, just as Adam and Eve did in the garden before the fall. But as we'll see next, the path of redemption isn't easy. The consequences of their actions ripple through history, and the consequences of our own choices can feel heavy. Yet, even in the darkest moments, God's light shines through, guiding us back toward the life He originally intended for us. As we continue through the stories of Genesis, we see how God's plan for redemption unfolds, how He takes our brokenness and makes something beautiful out of it. Cain and Abel. The battle within, between jealousy and sin. Cain was the firstborn, the one who had the privilege of being the first son of Adam and Eve, the ones chosen to bear the weight of humanity's legacy. Abel, his brother, was a keeper of sheep, while Cain tilled the ground. The contrast between them might seem simple. One worked with the land, the other with animals. But beneath this simplicity, a deep lesson about human nature was about to unfold. Both brothers offered sacrifices to God. Cain brought the fruits of the soil, and Abel brought the best of his flock, a lamb, a symbol of innocence and purity. Yet God looked favorably upon Abel's offering and rejected Cain's. Why? It wasn't because one offering was better than the other in the eyes of men. It was because of the heart behind the offering. Abel's gift was born out of his faith and trust in God, while Cain's offering lacked that same sincerity. Cain's heart was not aligned with the Creator's intentions. It was a gift given, not out of love, but out of duty. Cain's jealousy grew, and with it, a darkness that would consume him. This moment, though seemingly just a small story in the Bible, is a powerful reflection of human nature. We all experience moments of jealousy. We've all had moments when we felt overlooked or unappreciated, when someone else's success seemed like a personal affront to our own efforts. But Cain's story shows us where jealousy can lead, straight to anger, to bitterness, and ultimately to sin. His inability to confront his jealousy led him to the most tragic of actions, the murder of his brother. Cain could have turned his jealousy into a lesson in humility, but instead, he allowed it to grow into something much darker. We've all seen how unchecked emotions can poison our relationships. Whether it's resentment toward a colleague, jealousy in a friendship, or even unspoken frustration in our families, these feelings, when allowed to fester, lead us down destructive paths. The story of Cain and Abel warns us that sin isn't always a sudden dramatic fall. It often starts in the quiet spaces of our hearts, in the jealousy, the envy, the pride we refuse to confront. But God, in His infinite mercy, didn't abandon Cain after his act of violence. God still came to Cain, asking him, "Where is your brother?" He didn't simply accuse him or strike him down immediately. He offered Cain a chance to repent, to turn from his anger, to change his path. God said to Cain, "If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" These words are a reminder to us all that, no matter how dark the path may seem, there is always an opportunity for redemption, for restoration. Even in the deepest moments of our failures, God's mercy is present, calling us back to the light. Cain, of course, didn't heed God's warning. Instead, he chose to lie, to continue down a path of denial, refusing to take responsibility for his actions. And so, the consequences of his choices unfolded, with Cain being cursed and cast out from the presence of God, wandering the earth as a fugitive. But even in that moment of punishment, God's mercy was evident. He marked Cain with a sign to protect him, showing that even in the face of punishment, God's grace and protection never fully withdraw from His creation. The lesson here is powerful. Sin does not have to define us. Our choices, no matter how wrong, do not have to be the final word in our lives. Just as God offered Cain a way out, He offers us the same chance for redemption. But we must be willing to confront our own jealousy, pride, and anger before they lead us down a path we cannot return from. When we choose to let go of the bitterness in our hearts, we allow the healing power of God to enter, transforming even our darkest moments into opportunities for growth. The pain of creation, Noah and the flood. The world that God created was good. It was perfect. But as humanity grew, so did its corruption. The story of Noah is a powerful reminder of how the consequences of sin can escalate to a point where only a divine intervention can restore order. God saw that the wickedness of man had become great on the earth, and that every thought of his heart was only evil continually. And so he decided to send a flood to cleanse the earth and give it a new beginning. Noah, however, found favor in God's eyes. He was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. In a world gone astray, Noah stood firm in his faith. God told Noah to build an ark, a vessel that would preserve life as the waters of judgment would flood the earth. But Noah didn't just build the ark. He obeyed, trusting in God's plan, even when the world around him mocked and ridiculed him. For years, Noah worked on the ark, faithfully carrying out the task God had given him, not knowing the full scope of the disaster that was coming, but trusting that God's plan was for the good of all creation. The flood came, and the waters covered the earth, destroying everything in their path. But Noah, his family, and the animals were spared. And when the floodwaters receded, Noah and his family stepped out onto a new world. God made a covenant with Noah, promising never to destroy the earth by flood again, and he set the rainbow in the sky as a sign of that covenant. This story is filled with both a warning and a promise. The warning is clear. The consequences of living in sin are far-reaching. When we choose to walk away from God's ways, we invite destruction, not just into our own lives, but into the world around us. But the promise is equally powerful. God's grace is greater than our failings. Even when we as a people fall into deep sin, God makes a way for redemption, a way for restoration. The rainbow, that symbol of God's covenant, reminds us that God always provides a way to start anew, to rebuild, to heal. But Noah's story isn't just about the flood. It's about the trust Noah had in God's word. Think about the patience it took for Noah to keep building the ark year after year, to keep trusting in God's promise when there was no sign of rain. How often do we face moments where we are called to walk in faith even when we can't see the outcome? Like Noah, we are often asked to build the ark in our lives, to prepare for a future we cannot yet see, to trust that God's plan is good even when the world around us seems lost. Noah's story also invites us to reflect on our own responsibility to care for the world God has given us. Just as Noah was entrusted with the care of the earth and its creatures, we too are called to be stewards of the earth, to preserve and protect the environment and all living things. The flood was a reminder of the destructive power of human actions, but it was also a call to responsibility, to care for creation as God intended. In the end, the story of Noah is one of both judgment and mercy, a reminder that God's justice is always tempered with his grace. No matter how far the world falls into chaos, God's redemptive power is greater, and he will always make a way for those who trust in him. The rainbow, that beautiful sign in the sky, is a symbol of that eternal promise. It's a reminder that no matter how dark the storm may be, there is always hope for a new beginning. As we reflect on Noah's obedience, we are called to trust God in our own lives, to step out in faith even when we cannot see the full picture, and to be faithful stewards of the world he has entrusted to us. For in doing so, we too will find grace, redemption, and the opportunity for a fresh start. The Tower of Babel. When humanity challenged its limits. The Tower of Babel is one of the most striking and enigmatic stories in the Bible. It begins with a united humanity, speaking the same language, working toward a common goal. The people, driven by their ambition and pride, sought to build a tower that reached to the heavens, a monument to their power and greatness. The idea was simple. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered across the face of the whole earth. In their minds, this tower was not just a structure, it was a symbol of human achievement, a way to establish their dominance over the earth, to show their independence from God. But God, seeing their pride and their attempt to reach beyond the boundaries he had set, responded with a powerful intervention. He confused their language, causing them to no longer understand one another. The people, unable to communicate, were scattered across the earth, and the tower was left unfinished. This was a moment of divine judgment, but also a moment of grace. Through the scattering, humanity was forced to spread out, fulfilling the command to fill the earth, to live in harmony with God's creation rather than trying to control it. The Tower of Babel teaches us a profound lesson about human ambition. On the surface, the tower seems like an admirable project, a symbol of human creativity and unity. But at its core, it was a reflection of humanity's desire to control and surpass God's design. They wanted to build something that would elevate them above their maker. But in their striving to build a monument to their own greatness, they ignored the fact that true greatness is found in humility, in surrendering to God's will. This story also speaks to the dangers of pride and the illusion of self-sufficiency. We live in a world that constantly encourages us to strive for more, to push beyond our limits, to make a name for ourselves. And while there is nothing wrong with ambition, the Tower of Babel reminds us of the importance of humility and the danger of building our lives on our own strength rather than on God's foundation. When we try to construct our own towers, our own systems of achievement, success, or control, we may find ourselves losing the very thing we sought to gain, unity and purpose. In our own lives, how often do we try to build our own towers? Whether it's through career ambitions, financial success, or personal achievements, we sometimes forget that God is the one who gives us purpose and direction. When we try to go beyond the boundaries he has set, we risk creating chaos and division, not just in our own lives, but in the world around us. The people of Babel wanted to make a name for themselves, but in the end, they became scattered, their efforts undone. But when we build our lives on God's foundation, we find true purpose and unity. The Tower of Babel challenges us to reflect on where we place our trust. Are we building our lives on the shifting sands of human ambition, or on the solid rock of God's promises? Are we seeking to make a name for ourselves, or are we allowing God to use us for his greater purpose? As we move forward, we must recognize that our true purpose in life is not found in our own glory, but in God's glory. His plans for us are greater than anything we could build on our own. And when we surrender our ambitions to him, we begin to see our lives align with his divine design. God's covenant with Abraham, faith, and the everlasting promise. As we turn the page from the Tower of Babel, we come to one of the most pivotal moments in the Bible, God's covenant with Abraham. In a world that had been scattered and confused, God called one man to follow him, to step into the unknown, and to trust in a promise that would change the course of history. Abraham was not a perfect man, but he was a man of faith, and in his faith, God saw something powerful, something that would become the foundation of a new relationship between God and his people. When God called Abraham to leave his home, his family, and everything he knew, it was an act of immense trust. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, God commanded. Abraham didn't know where he was going, nor did he know what the future would hold. Yet he obeyed. He trusted in God's promise that he would make of Abraham a great nation, that through him all the families of the earth would be blessed. This moment in Abraham's life speaks deeply to us today. How often do we feel uncertain about the future? How often do we hesitate to step into the unknown because we fear what might happen? Abraham's story is a testament to the power of trust and obedience. He didn't know where God was leading him, but he trusted that God's plan was greater than his own understanding. God's promise to Abraham was not just about land or descendants. It was about a relationship, a covenant that would endure for generations. God said, "I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing." This wasn't just about material wealth or worldly success. It was about being a vessel for God's blessings to flow through to others. Abraham's faith was not merely for his own benefit, it was for the benefit of all nations. But this promise came with a challenge. Abraham had to trust. He had to believe in the unseen, to walk by faith, not by sight. And through his faith, God established a covenant that would last forever. This covenant wasn't just for Abraham's descendants. It was for all who, like Abraham, choose to trust in God's promises, to walk by faith and not by sight. This is where the story takes on deep personal significance for us today. Just as Abraham was called to leave everything behind and step into the unknown, we too are called to step out in faith. Whether it's trusting God with our careers, our relationships, or our futures, the covenant that God made with Abraham is still in effect today. We are heirs to that promise, heirs to the blessings that God bestowed upon Abraham. And just as God was faithful to Abraham, he is faithful to us. But faith isn't always easy. Just as Abraham faced moments of doubt and fear, we too will face challenges that test our trust in God. Yet God's promise remains unchanging. He will never leave us, and he will always lead us to the place he has prepared for us. The covenant God made with Abraham was not just a promise of land, it was a promise of his presence, of his guidance, and of his eternal love. As we reflect on Abraham's faith, we are invited to consider our own relationship with God. Are we willing to trust him fully, to step into the unknown with the assurance that he will guide us? Just as God blessed Abraham, he will bless us, but we must choose to walk in faith, to follow his lead, and to trust in his promises. The story of Abraham is not just a historical account, it is a call to each of us to live by faith, to trust in God's plan, and to be a blessing to those around us. It's a reminder that no matter where we are in life, God is faithful to keep his promises, and through our faith, we can be part of the great covenant that spans generations. God's covenant with Abraham is the foundation of our own relationship with him. As we move forward in faith, we are called to be faithful stewards of his blessings, to walk in obedience, and to trust that his promises will never fail. As we come to the end of this journey through Genesis, I invite you to take a moment and reflect on the profound lessons we've uncovered together. From the creation of the world, to the fall of humanity, to the divine promises made to our forefathers, this ancient book is not just a collection of stories, it is a timeless guide for us today. It's a story of hope, of grace, of forgiveness, and most importantly, it's a story of God's unfailing love. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, Genesis teaches us that no matter how far we may stray from God's path, he is always ready to call us back. Like Noah, we too can find grace in the eyes of the Lord, even in the darkest of times. Like Abraham, we are called to walk by faith, trusting that God's promises are greater than anything we could imagine. Like Cain, we are reminded that jealousy and sin have consequences, but God's mercy is always available to us, if only we turn to him with repentance. This story is not just ancient history, it's the story of our lives. Every day we are faced with choices, with moments of doubt and fear, and with opportunities for growth. And we may not be building an ark, but we are called to build lives of faith, of trust, and of love. We may not be called to sacrifice our sons, but we are invited to offer our hearts in obedience, trusting that God's plan is greater than our own. And just as God promised Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky, we too are part of that promise. Through faith in Jesus Christ, We are heirs to the same covenant that was made with Abraham. God's promise to bless and multiply is not just for the past, it is for us today. We are called to be a blessing to the world, to reflect God's love, and to share His truth with those around us. As we close this chapter, I want to encourage you to keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep trusting in the promises of God. Life is not always easy, and the path is not always clear. But with God's light shining before us, we can face any challenge. Genesis reminds us that in every beginning, there is hope. In every struggle, there is redemption, and in every heart, there is the potential to be made new through God's grace. If this video has brought value to your soul or helped you find light in a dark moment, I invite you to share in that light. Every word of encouragement, every comment, and every like helps to spread the message of hope that we are called to share. I would be deeply grateful for your support, whether it's through a like, a comment, or simply by subscribing. Your support fuels this channel and helps me continue sharing the Word of God with others. If you feel moved by this message, know that your energy, your support, makes a difference. Your engagement is a way for us to spread the truth of God's love to more people, and it would mean the world to me. Every contribution, no matter how small, is invaluable in continuing this mission to bring healing and light into the world. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this journey. May God bless you abundantly, and may His light continue to guide your steps as you walk in faith, love, and truth. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Until then, keep seeking, keep shining, and keep trusting in His perfect plan.